Good evening. I now call to order the regular board meeting of the Park Ridge Park District Board of Commissioners. Today is Thursday, February 20th, 2020. It is 7:02 p.m. May we all rise to say the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. May you call the roll?
Commissioner Coyne?
Here.
Commissioner Grau?
Here.
Commissioner Leduc?
Here.
Commissioner Leach? Commissioner O'Donnell?
Here.
Commissioner Tunnell?
Here.
Commissioner Harrington?
Here. Does anyone have anything they'd like to amend, add, or delete to our current agenda? I have an amendment. I would like to move to add closed meeting as an agenda item after new business regarding probable or imminent litigation per 2C11. May I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? May we have a roll call vote?
Commissioner Coyne?
Aye.
Commissioner Grau?
Aye.
Commissioner Leduc?
Aye.
Commissioner Leach? Commissioner O'Donnell?
Yes.
Commissioner Tunnell?
Aye.
Commissioner Harrington?
Yes. And then this is the time in our agenda where we open it up to public comment on non-agenda items. Anyone in our audience tonight wish to speak on non-agenda items before the board? Seeing none, we'll move on to the approval of minutes. I move to approve the special board meeting minutes of Wednesday, January 15th, 2020, the regular board and public hearing meeting minutes of Thursday, January 16th, 2020, and the regular board meeting minutes of Thursday, February 6th, 2020.
Second.
Any concerns or changes or corrections needed to the minutes? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? We'll move on to the report section of the meeting. I have nothing to report at this time, but we have our attorney present in case he has an update at this time. Okay. Thank you. And Executive Director Mountcastle.
Sure. I do not have any general updates or anything under marketing and public relations. If you do not have any questions, or if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer. But if not, I'll move to the human resources report, and that is on page 17 of your packet. There's a memo from Director DeGangi, the Human Resource Director, regarding follow-up from the inquiry from Commissioner Leach, who I realize is not here this evening, but regarding, we added the seasonal head count as of today, and then the percentage of Park Ridge resident employees, which is 83%. Park Ridge residents, so there's 153 total employees, and then 127 are Park Ridge residents. I wanted to bring that to your attention. Additionally, we said we were going to look at, tweaking the policy, or if we could add wording, or how we would manage the request of wanting to hire more Park Ridge, make sure we're giving preference to Park Ridge residents. It's our recommendation that we refrain from changing this policy due to legal, to avoid legal risk, but rather articulate in a staff goal something to the effect of that we're going to continue to recruit and retain residents of Park Ridge where appropriate in seasonal part-time positions.
I just want to be clear, we're not making sure that Park Ridge residents come first, but we hear the value being expressed in the discussion, which was, Park Ridge taxpayers and there's business to be done with the Park District. But when it comes to hiring and personnel, as we know, there are protected classes of things, whether that's gender, sexual orientation, race, national origin. And the problem with residency preference per se is that could bump up against protected classes. We don't want to open the door to that kind of thing. So that's why we hear staff and talking about it, we hear the general value being expressed, and as that will recruit heavily in Park Ridge, trying to get as many of our high school people here in Park Ridge, and we're returning college students to help us with the seasonal work in particular. But it's too fraught with too much risk to put it in the policy generally as something that will be looked upon as weighting the scale in a decision.
I wanted to commend Director DeGangi for her work in promoting job fairs, not only this year, but in previous years. But I recently saw, some postings of job fair coming up, and I know that they've done a lot of work at the high school and have good relationships there. So support encouraging her in her work to reach out amongst the community to let them know of opportunities.
So I don't know if you want to give us direction at this point, or, how you want me to handle moving forward with this, if you accept the recommendation, or, how we want to.
Other commissioners have any comments on the recommendations or the statistics or the process thus far? Commissioner O'Donnell?
I accept the recommendation of our attorney.
Do we have general consensus on the recommendation to continue to recruit and retain? Oh, Commissioner Coyne,
I
sorry.
just want to make sure I understand that the idea that there might be some certain advantages to having a resident because local knowledge, essentially, of the area, knowing the people, might in certain job descriptions be a good reason to hire a person, or at least one of in a list, as opposed to saying that you have to reside in Park Ridge in order to have those qualities. Is that
Right. So if we,
or where you,
in a
what,
specific instance, if we think that that is a real value for that job, we can put it in a particular job description.
Okay.
Then we're sticking with the same policy, which is hiring the best qualified person.
Mhm.
And qualification for that particular position might include that description, that local knowledge is preferred. But there's disparate views among the commissioners here. So when you say, whose knowledge or whose understanding of the community fits that, you're treading in hard waters for staff to execute.
absolutely. Okay. Thank you. That's my only question.
Do we have general consensus from the board on the staff goal to continue to recruit and retain residents of Park Ridge where appropriate, for example, like seasonal and part-time positions?
Where appropriate.
Yes. Where appropriate? Great.
Mhm.
Great. Thank you, staff and
Sure.
Dirk, for working up that review in short order.
Okay. So we'll move on to the Oakton Park and Facility Public Engagement process. We're at the stage. We had our second meeting last night. Several of the commissioners were there. Thank you for participating and being there. The ones also on the task force specifically participating. So after the second meeting, the goal of the second meeting was to get to a place where the group, the task force, agreed on what was going to be shared and tested in the community, and then start the public, the public information phase, which would be the next couple months, and then they would come back, and that includes, going out to meetings, availability of tours, information on the website, letter to all residents, a survey to all residents, polling, a limited polling. I think it was about 300, either phone or email, was it? Or phone, or it's a polling, that it's a limited polling that'll be done by an outside company. And then gather all that data and add that to, what we have now. And then the May 6th meeting, the goal would then be to make the final recommendation to come back to the park board and say, we think, XYZ plan should be, go on the referendum, or we don't think it should go, or, whatever the recommendation is. And then that would come to the board at the next board meeting, and then we would go from there. So overall, from my perspective, I think it's been an excellent process. I feel like we are going to get the best input and gauge that we possibly can, with this extensive process. And I so appreciate the task force committee to this date, or to this time, with their time and commitment. So, and we added, just for the board's knowledge, we added this step in going on in all these stages. Usually it seems like typically in this process, doesn't come to the board till the May meeting, but we said, no, the board's gonna wanna weigh in on what we send out, test to the public. So, the general, what came out of the meeting, it was that it is the recommendation of the task force, it was a consensus to share and test the board-approved master plan, which was C1, I think it's called C1. And so how he did it, where there was 4 different groups of task force members. There was a total of 23 people there last evening. Now there's 33 currently on the task force. We did have some absences, and then we had some dropout between the first and the second meeting. There's about 4 that dropped out, and we have their reasoning, and it's all either jobs or illnesses, etc. She broke them into 4 groups and went through a series of 5 questions and had them come back. And the commissioners that were here, please, and staff jump in, when I'm forgetting anything during my explanation. But then he had them work as a group and answer all of those, and they didn't have to come to a consensus on them, but just report back, what the group thought, and then he was going to take a vote at the end, and come to some conclusion. So, of all the 4 groups, all the participants but one said yes, that we should share and test C1. The one that was opposed, he asked her, and she said her concern was that she'd like the question asked about just completing a baseline project. And he explained that that would be covered amongst several other questions that are concerns to people in the polling and survey. So then we would have a gauge of these things that, people were concerned about. And, it's going out to every single resident, the survey. So she changed her vote to yes after that. So the first question is, should the park district proceed in sharing and testing district-wide a proposal to address improvements at Oakton Park? So I apologize. That was the response to that. The next one, should C1 concept be shared and tested in the current form or be modified in some way before proceeding? Group 1 said yes. They all said yes. There was no, Group 2 said yes. 4 of them said yes to C1. 2 wanted a more modest plan, but in the end, all 6 wanted to move forward with the C1 proposal, but tweak it for an indoor walking space. Group 3 had 5 yeses and 1 no, and that's where I just explained about the person that, that wanted the baseline question about just doing the rink, and then changed her vote. And then Group 4 said yes to the C1. They had some other comments about locker room size, turf to be larger, and then 1 comment about turf rental costs. Then there was 3 more questions. What part of the project, if any, will resonate with district residents, and then what will not resonate with residents? And then the 5th question was any concerns regarding financing plan and estimated tax impact. So there were several great comments. I can go through the comments if you want, or I can open it up for other, members of the task force of board members. I do have written copies of what I'm going through if you want me to pass those around. And so
Yeah, I
I'm
think
open for
that's
input
great.
at this point.
I don't know if we need to read all the comments, but I'd love to.
Okay.
I personally would love to see them. If others who weren't there last night would like to see them as well.
And please correct me, anybody, if I've, missed something or if I'm wrong. So the committee, they recommended that that's what we do, that we, go out to the public with that plan. Any comments?
Commissioner Grau?
There was a lot of new information there that our board has not talked about before. Is that not going to be discussed by the
one of
board?
I did want to mention the whole track concept, because I don't even know if I have enough copies there. I apologize.
I think the tax applications too, we've never seen in that level of detail, right?
Yeah, there's a lot.
So so I guess I should say, before they broke up into groups,
We're good.
the presentation was everybody was there but Harmony. So the presentation was, the architects gave a presentation, Sandra gave a presentation on the finances, Terry gave a couple slides of things, along with the architects about kind of where we've been. And the new item, the biggest new item, and it was one of the questions we had, I guess we had asked several, we had asked for them to give input, and then we had on the tables in gonna be quite costly. It was gonna be $2.5 million to add it, above the indoor turf. It was gonna be 1.5 to add it on the outside and expand the size of the turf building. And it caused a lot of ripple effects, like loss of trees and then bumping up to the driving range, parking lot, I believe. So as we were getting ready for the meeting yesterday, the architect said, what about, a walking area inside of the turf? And we had not thought of that because we didn't think the width of it was gonna be enough for that. And so how the plan is now, the smallest side, which would be the north side, had 7 feet. And so we talked about that. We're like, it would be, everything else would be about 5 feet. And then the side opposite that is 15 feet, but there's bleachers, right? And then the two other sides are 10 feet. So like, yeah, size-wise, it's not gonna be perfect. It's not gonna be like a blind track, but we could. So we talked as a staff, and the programming staff said, as long as it's not a tournament or a big rental or a programming that, negates that, and that would be a, conflict. If there's just a couple classes during the day, we could put up a schedule weekly or, however it turns out we do that, and that we could probably accommodate that. So that was, very favorable, to the group. And then the architects went through the presentation, right, of everything we talked about in the plan. And they talked about some more things, green initiatives, that they had not brought up to the group before. Net zero building, doing some solar paneling, trying to do LEED, be LEED. But these are all, they were very clear about even the plan, and the pictures. They said they're representative of. Don't get tied to that, and don't get tied to, these are ideas, right, that we could do in this facility. I think that was the only new things that.
Well, we didn't hear the tax implication as a board. We've never heard the,
Right.
so what is it?
I think we reported on it last spring or summer. I had some numbers, but these were more updated. So
Can we hear?
yeah.
I wasn't there.
So the estimate for a $25 million project, because we're looking at the price tag for C1 was $28 million, but we have identified $3 million in our capital fund projections. So we reduced that to estimate, if we were to go for a referendum question, that the amount of bonds would be $25 million. And so based on that dollar amount and pricing and a 25-year repayment, and the structure filling in the debt when the Prospect Park bonds roll off, that it amounted to, for the median home value in Park Ridge of $427,000, annual increase in their taxes of $92, which comes out to about $8 a month. So we shared that with the group.
And then in terms of the plan, it's the board approved master plan, right? So it's the same plan.
So Gail and I talked today. There was a lot of information about LEED and certified and net zero building, which would mean that it would be lessen your carbon footprint, etc. And a lot of people got really excited about that. Are those things that are going to be used in the what you float all those that might happen? But what are we testing? What we know, there's going to be a field house. We know there's going to be renovations to the structure. But what about these things that are nice to have that we cannot guarantee that we can have?
I think we, I was working on the wording of the letter today, and for instance, the trail, and I'll drop those other ones, right? But I'm not sure if it's in the materials. Now, we can handle them however we need to make very clear what's in the budget and what's not, right? So the trail, for instance, that we keep talking about, that is a potential future trail into the forest preserve, we would say this is not in the, it's not in the project cost, but we're working on it to give them an idea that this is something we're looking at.
But the trail on the property is.
Yes.
Well, it's very important that you distinguish,
I don't
because
think
they
we
showed it in the drawing and everything, so.
I also fear a lazy river scenario.
Yeah,
Sounds
yeah,
very
yes.
similar,
Of
and
course.
that folks then
It's
glom
tricky,
onto
right?
something
yeah.
and they say, great, we're getting this or that.
Right,
And
but I mean, like I explained to Cindy, that can change at any time.
Yeah.
Because when you go out to bid, I mean, we can go out and say, this is our potential, it's the way you word it.
I would rather, but I would rather add amenities than say you're gonna get these amenities, or we're thinking of these things and then you don't get them. So
I
that's the concern I have. We might have lead certification, we might get that's not,
We can leave that out of the materials and maybe make a general statement, like we
exploring
are,
green technology.
you know, we're looking at sustainable.
Right, or even it could be a question that, is that important for you for us to contemplate as we move forward? Because, the way that we've talked about that with White was that, those were things that we felt that we could add into the project, especially with some of the solar things at little to no cost. She felt that the lead certification items were things that we could do with very little implication. Lois's comment was that, where we're at with the current energy code and our requirements there and some of the things that she thinks we can accomplish, she thinks LEED is very achievable. Now, what I'm hearing from you is you don't want to promise people a LEED building when that's not what we're going to do.
promise, you don't even say it. You don't say lazy river if you don't think you're gonna get a lazy river. And the lead certification, from what I read, I did not hear the presentation, was if we keep the building shell of the ice rink, that we'll get credits and that will get us LEED certification. Now that's crazy because we've never considered getting rid of that building. And if that's how you get LEED certification, I think that's just ridiculous. We have never considered taking that building down.
Sure.
We didn't have the money for it. And if you want to,
Example.
well, it was a full page on the.
That you talked through, and to your point, it's in print, I get it, you know, I get it.
So I have nothing else to go on.
Mm-hmm.
And neither does anyone else that we send information out to. I mean, if we can do it, we should say we can do it and ask people, or if there's an additional cost or whatever. But, I saw that and it's all nice to have. Well, we could put ponies out there too. You didn't put that in there. You know what I'm saying?
I think the concept where it was, and her actual words were that she felt that LEED was very achievable.
Yeah, with a bogus scenario. I mean,
I don't know
are we not
which-
tearing that building down so we get credit for LEED?
No, she didn't.
Maybe that came across.
That was the
just
first
reading
slide, and then there was a
I
neck.
didn't get that in the presentation.
Yeah.
Well, that's the problem, that I wasn't there. But that's the thing, our board doesn't even know what was said, some of us. So, I read that information and I was like, where did this all come from? And B, what's going out to the public?
So I know you said you're working on kind of the letter.
Documents.
the
There's
project.
several, there's a letter and like a plan, there's a survey, and then there's also the questionnaire, right? Or survey, that's newsletter, thank you. I knew there was three.
Hearing you talk about you're
Mhm.
being very sensitive
Mhm.
to the wording and
Yes.
not wanting to promise things that aren't there.
Mhm.
Is there an opportunity for the board to see the materials going out to the public?
Yeah, we can, but it's.
This
wrong
first
time,
one will
yeah.
be a tight turnaround, but
Sure.
the rest of them we have more time. But right now,
The
the
le-
materials, I don't remember them saying anything
No,
about.
they don't. Not the one, not with the letter and the attachment. The attachment is the
I know
plan.
Those definitely don't. I wasn't sure
Oh.
if the newsletter might have a part of it of.
I don't think it goes into any
what you've
detail.
done, but
Yeah.
I don't.
I'd have to look again.
I don't think it's in there, yeah.
Well, I think what Terry said, is that of interest to you is way better than saying, that we're going to do it, or implicating in any way that's part of our plan. Because there's probably additional costs that we have not
Mhm.
budgeted for.
And Lois said exactly the opposite. I mean, she'd identified that there would be a cost to bring on the, and I don't know the term of the person, but the person that has to help certify it. But she didn't feel, her comment, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but her comment at the meeting was that she felt that that was very achievable within the budgets and the plans that we have in front of us. So
Well,
we have, I mean,
it never came to the board. It never came to the board. So now
Right.
we're putting
So,
this information out.
but we're testing it. We're just testing it, and you're gonna get all this information and data back, like, is this important to the community, right? We'll ask all these questions about the trees, about the trail, we'll ask about everything that was a hot button issue, about like just doing, the basic plan of fixing the rink. All those will be part of these questions, and that all that data will help you make your decision. And so you have the final say, right? You're gonna have the final say.
It's not about me. It's about putting things out there that are not,
I hear you. I hear you. I hear
we're
you.
not committing to those things.
Because if you put it out there and you get the survey results back and everybody's enthusiastic because you're going to build a lead building, and then you don't build it, I mean, your survey results are then skewed because people are saying, oh, yeah, I'm in favor of that. But if you perhaps, and Rita's using this as just one example, you pull that out, they might not have voted, they might not have surveyed in favor of the project. That's kind of what you're saying. So we're going to get survey results that might be skewed because we've kind of overpromised. Now, I don't think it's overpromising to say that we're going to make every effort to build as green as possible, and to maybe specifically ask a question if it's important in the survey to achieve LEED or other certifications for sustainability. But I agree with you 100% that you shouldn't promise that. You guys keep talking about the lazy river. I wasn't here then, but
We
I
weren't
do-
either.
Wasn't either.
None of us were.
But the-
We hear about it, yeah.
Never promise.
Right,
It's just-
but see if it's in,
Tested.
but it tested.
Huh?
But
was
people were
tested.
tested for and asked for things, and it's the
Yes, but they're testing and ask for a
But-
bunch of things.
Right.
And the bottom line with the commissioners here at that point, their thinking on that lazy river was, we don't want to be short-sighted for the future. And that's why it said,
Available room for future.
yes,
Right.
available room for potential future. And we know what happened, right? So you're,
It happened here too. It happened here too with this.
it happened here because we wanted to be on budget, which we've been on, right, for every single one of these projects. So that's part of going through construction projects sometimes too. Because you cannot, I mean, it was either that or go over budget because of things that were out of control and permitting,
I'm not disagreeing with the decision at all.
right? And so one of the comments from one of the groups, and one of the people in the groups was a very good one last night. He said, plan a 26 million, whatever we come back with, under, plan and take things out because of things like that. And I completely
And
agree.
over-deliver.
Yeah, and over deliver, right?
I kind of sense that we're all in the same line of
Right.
that we are not looking to bring something to the community that we don't expect we can deliver on. I think we might have some varying views on how achievable some of those deliverables are. And maybe it's more about how we position and talk about it. To your point, Commissioner Grau, maybe we're not saying lead, and, we're Commissioner Coyne's point, we're talking about, how are we going about these things sustainably? Is that important as we move forward? And, how do we prioritize that as we go forward with this project? So when we have to make these tough decisions or budgetary constraints, if we hit against them, are we favoring the sustainable measures, or are we favoring the size and amenities of the project? And it'll be helpful information for us to have. I think it's important for people to understand our desire to do that, and that we feel that we can do it, but that way it gives us all that information as we go forward. So
And I think that, to Commissioner Coyne's point, we're going, again, this is a new process for all of us, right? I mean, and we all agreed that this is the best thing to do. So we have to put a little bit of faith in this process. And we're not at a point, we're going out asking questions to the public. We're not saying we're going to do it. That's the point of a survey, right? And we can we explain that their final vote is if we go to referendum. We're not going to do anything if we don't go to referendum, right? So when we get to that final plan, all of us in this room will say, this is what we're ending up with, and that will go all over the public, right? This is the final. So,
It sounds like there is general consensus for the staff to look at it through kind of that sensitive lens with wording and outlining the outreach to the public. So I appreciate, it looks like my fellow commissioners do too, kind of that thought process behind it.
I agree.
Any other comments on the Oakton process? Any further comments to the staff?
Can we talk about the timeline again? I know we've heard it a few times, but I don't remember.
No, that's all right. Well, first of all, the board needs to either, you need to vote on this recommendation, right? Or consensus, I guess, on the recommendation. Then the timeline is, the next meeting for the task force is May 6th. And then in between that timeline, there's several things that are going to happen in terms of, do you want to hear about all mean, we don't have all the meeting dates, right? We're gonna be out and about at all the meetings, and you can come to any of them you want, but a letter goes out, with the plan, and that's March 6th, that's the schedule, right? And then there's the survey.
No, the newsletter's next,
Yep,
and that drops in the mail March 13th, I believe. And then the survey, I don't have that date off the top of my
No.
head. I want to say April 8th, but I might be wrong.
sure. Letter attachment, March 6th, FAQ newsletter, March 13th. So that'll, all the, Q&As and all this stuff that people ask. Website update and other social media. We're having 3 public meetings, March 14th, April 1st, and April 18th. March and April, we're going out to present to all the community groups. The mail survey is March 20th. The phone poll, hybrid poll is April 19th through the 22nd. And as I said, the task force meeting is 26th. And then we'll be bringing, if all of that goes along, we'll be bringing that recommendation to the board on May 21st. So this is all in that presentation that we sent to all of you yesterday. You have the presentation from yesterday, and realize it's very different verbally, right? Because you miss a lot that, they go through at the meetings, so.
So I appreciate you sharing with us, this is the first time we're going through a process like this. But looking at some of these communications and dates, this is going to become public very quickly on a broad scale. So I think it's really important that the board as kind of, frontline engagement with the public, be ready. I mean, there's going to be lots of questions and lots of discussion about this project as soon as we launch, March 6th with this letter and survey and newsletter. So I think it's important that we spend some time here tonight, like recognizing that and thinking that through. It is going to be, we want it to become very public, but now it's going to really start.
Yes.
The public discussion will begin.
And we can have you guys look at any of this stuff and give us your input on all of these documents if you want, or, so that's your choice, right? You just have to let me know.
Who's designing the documents? Is it a
Basically,
combination of staff?
Paul is
The consultant.
the consultant,
The
and
consultant.
we're editing everything,
Right.
right? Our staff team is editing everything, and Dirk will be looking at everything that goes out, because just for legal purposes. But we can have if the board wants, maybe at our next meeting, if you want to have a little, we can send you maybe, will that Q&A be done?
We have a draft of it
A
now.
draft. So maybe what we could do is send you that, and then you can look through the presentation from, just think through any other questions you may have. And maybe at our first meeting in March, because that'll be good timing, we could spend some time really talking through any questions you have, or, to prepare you for that. Does that sound like a good plan?
I would appreciate that.
I think that's great.
It's fine.
I agree. You're the ones
That's
that are
fine.
going to get the questions,
Right.
right?
Well, we want to be prepared. I
Yeah.
just don't want to be, we're paying a bunch of money to somebody that knows how to do these things. So I want to make sure that they're allowed to do their job without interference from an insurance guy. Okay, so, but I do want to be in the loop as to, because every time we go out, we're going to
Of
be getting
course,
asked
of
about
course.
this, right? So,
I think we should spend some time at that meeting. You guys, we'll get you the draft of and if you see anything on there that, you don't like, or you want to give input, no, we should probably be asking this. We'll take your input. This is a team effort, right? And that'll be March 5th, our meeting, so it'll be perfect timing.
I'd be happy to bring any commissioner that would like on a back of the house tour, anything they want of Oakton as well, just to help understand the current conditions. So some of you haven't been there, seen that. Yeah.
We had our field trip, didn't
Yeah. I'm just offering.
we? We've been there. It's
Want any more prep?
I can't be, yeah, it's not any better than it was with
No, it's not, but just offering.
April.
He takes a sledgehammer every week and breaks something else.
No.
I don't need a sledgehammer.
Just does it on its own.
I would just, I want to thank Commissioner Grau for bringing that up. I think we don't want to overpromise anything to the public. So, I stand with that sentiment. So just in reviewing it, we don't want to promise the farm if, put the cart before the horse. So I appreciate you bringing that up because it's a great point. So, I mean, we need a lot of the things that I appreciate last night is just the input from the public. And I think what they're very cautious on the project as far as like the fees in the future. I heard that a few times. And I just want it to be for everybody to be able to buy into a feeling, because it's an intangible right now. It's just a feeling like that we're looking at. And I think it's going to be really critical for the support of the community that they trust the decisions we're making as a board, that hopefully will be reflective of the opinion at that point. But I think we need to be cautious just to not overpromise anything. So just using generic versions of, green initiative, I think is better than like what Cindy said. So.
Commissioner O'Donnell.
I have two different points. As far as, and this has been a point of real frustration for me, I understand that we're going to want to have some input as to what's going to go out to the public. This is really important. Now, I agree with Commissioner Coyne that we're paying somebody that should know what we need to have input. But, and maybe I'm preaching to the choir here, but we've had problems with this in the past. We had it with the affiliate agreement, and we have it during the budget process, that this stuff goes out and there is time for comment. And then at the very last minute, we get accused of jamming things through and questions get raised. And we can't do that with this. It's too time sensitive and it's too important. Okay, I like I said, I'm probably preaching to the choir, but I want to make that point because it's been a point of real frustration for me. Okay, so got that off my chest. I wanted to, I was one of the facilitators last night, and I want to say that I had a couple different reactions from the first meeting to last night. So the first meeting, I was struck by, I'm going, man, this is really going to be good because there's a fantastic cross-section. They're all different interest groups. I mean, there were ice people, and there were soccer people, and there was everybody. And so I told my wife when I left the house last night, don't plan to see me before they say 9 o'clock. There's no way. It's going to be 11, and there's going to be yelling and screaming. And I was shocked. There was really no loud dissent whatsoever on this. There really was consensus. Even at the table where I sat, where two of the people that I fully expected, no way, and they kind of said, yeah, this plan, it looks like it's thought through. One of them said, I'm not going to go out and fight for this, but I'm not going to go out and fight against it. So that, to me, that was really telling. Really, the dissent that came, there were comments about, there were kind of some of the parochial concerns about, well, we need more locker room space, and we need this, and we need that. Yeah, okay, great. And the soccer people want a bigger facility. Yeah, I get it. But it wasn't yelling and screaming. They weren't strong points. One of the loudest complaints was, well, our fees are too high. Well, and that was kind of a broad statement besides it. Yeah, okay, but it's got nothing to do with what we're talking about here. So I just wanted to make that point. I was surprised that there was as much consensus on this as there was. And then just to top it all off, so then there was all this stuff about, okay, so why aren't people going to vote for this? In fact, the matter is, there's a lot of reasons people aren't going to vote for this. I mean, there's people like me that are anti-tax people, and well, the seniors aren't going to vote for this because they don't use the facilities. And I was biting my tongue because I'm a senior and I use the facilities. And you know what? There are other seniors using facilities. I don't buy any of that. Anyway, but the other point that came out of our group, the suggestion about the track came out of our group. And then you guys stand up, oh yeah, we can put one here and it'll be limited time. Perfect. Just check that box, and it can be for seniors, and they can do it for free, and I don't have to hear that complaint anymore. Fabulous. So anyway, it was really an interesting night.
Well, even the track, though, I don't think we should say there'll be an indoor track.
No, right. I've already.
There'll be indoor.
That one will really.
There would be
that will
indoor
kill
walking
us.
space, limited.
Yeah,
at
that
certain
is the
times.
one that will kill us.
Yeah, at certain times.
Yeah. It's not a track. I agree with you.
Yeah,
That could be a big
that would just, we would never hear the
Why we
end of
have
it.
a lot of eyes on it, and the more eyes, the merrier, and as long as the timing about, you
Yeah.
know, we're on a tight timeline. I know that gets frustrating to you guys sometimes, but.
Well, I don't want to oversee it. I think you understand what we're saying, and I trust you with that. It's just when you go and you see something, we've been working on this for a year and you've never seen it before, and you're like, I've never seen this before. So I want to know what the public's being told.
I mean, that presentation we were working on, and I've explained that to Commissioner O'Donnell too. That afternoon till 4 o'clock, we were editing, or 5, we were editing, and the meeting started at 6, you know, and so, you know, unfortunately, it's hard sometimes for us, right? So it's either we hold it and don't show you because it's not perfect, or we give it to you right before a meeting, and then you're not happy with that, but it's like, we do our best to try
I
to
understand that.
get information to you when we can, on these things, and I do take a little, shouldn't get into the affiliate thing, but that was a 1.5 year process, at least. So that, I mean, I take a little offense to that.
We can't fix that.
I know.
So at this point, if there's no further discussion, I'm going to move to approve the task force's recommendation of what to test and share with the public regarding the Oakton Park and facility plan.
Second.
Since we've already had some good discussion, the only thing I want to add is a thank you to the task force members who have been serving thus far for giving their time, and it sounds like true engagement and input. So can we have a
It was
roll?
impressive.
What?
It was impressive what those people did.
It was way more positive than I was expecting from so many people.
With that positive note,
Sorry. Commissioner Grau,
Yes.
Commissioner Leduc,
Yes.
Commissioner Leach, Commissioner O'Donnell,
Yes.
Commissioner Tunnel,
Yes.
Commissioner Coyne,
Aye.
Commissioner Harrington.
yes. And now on to reports. Commissioner Leduc, thank you.
All right, and I'm going to turn it over to Superintendent DeAngelis.
Thank you. My written report begins on page 18 of your packet. I do have a few highlights, and I wanted to have a little discussion with the board about the financial reports. So the first highlight I have on my first bullet point is that we did receive our recognition from the Government Finance Officers Association for the Certificate of Achievement for Excellence in Financial Reporting. This was the 37th year in a row that the district has received this award, so we're very proud of that.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And the finance staff is instrumental in making that happen, so I have them to thank as well. Also, we're getting close to closing. The auditors are scheduled for the week of March 9th, and the results are looking very good. So we're projecting now that we'll be able to transfer from operating funds to capital $850,000 compared to the budgeted amount of $250,000. I highlighted a number of things that contributed to that. So yes.
You didn't put IMET in there. That was one, wasn't it, or no?
No,
Okay.
it contributes to our cash position, but it's not an income statement
I'm glad I asked.
thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
And tell me what, I must have missed something. The first one, the corporate replacement tax.
Yeah, so, we get our property taxes, and then we also get this revenue from the state called personal property replacement taxes. It's a corporate tax. At one time, there were personal property taxes, and this corporate tax replaced it. So this is a tax that corporations pay to the state, and it's called personal property replacement taxes. So when the economy is doing well, that tends to go up. It had been declining for a couple of years, and we always try to budget conservatively. So that amount was up, I think it was about 60,000 compared to what we had budgeted. So.
That's the state, you get that from the state.
Mhm. So I think it's usually about,
Anybody that's involved in a business knows about it.
yeah. So we budgeted 175,000. It's not a huge part of our budget, but it, it was a big chunk of, yeah, I'm trying to look for big chunks that contributed to our great performance and why we might not always expect it to repeat itself. Although we can hope.
Can you remind me, and you may not know this offhand, like the past few years, what we've been transferring from the operating fund into the capital budget?
Yeah, it was more like about 250,000.
That's my recollection. So a very successful year on a number of front, it looks like, and not just in, the corporate replacement tax, but programming growth. By way
Right.
of Beyond the Bell.
Yep.
Brickton.
Mm-hmm.
After we go camp, thank you D64. And, as you note in here, excellent expense control by the staff. So I think those are really important to note, that this wasn't just by way of tax windfall. or other,
absolutely.
that there's clearly a lot of hard work by the staff to increase programming and a lot of growth. So I want to point that out. So it's duly noted.
Absolutely. Staff has done a great job. The other area that I highlighted was staff turnover. So our wages, salaries and wages were down from budgeted. And, when we have staff turnover, it's not always going to be to that benefit. So I don't think it's something that we should hope for. And it just happened to work out that way for whatever reason, that certain staff that left were, right.
Time that there's a gap, and then it also, the new starting salaries are typically not, what they were. And we've had a lot, I think we had some long-time staff in the last year. It all kind of blends together.
of retirements.
And, that had been here for a number of years, right?
Terry had a few vacancies for some amount of time, right? So it's just a number of things that just so happen. And that's why I want to point it out, because again, it's not necessarily repeatable. But it is important to note that the program growth may not continue to expand. We may reach a ceiling there, but staff has done an incredible job of making that happen and controlling expenses all the while.
We have not hit this kind of a number for several years.
Right.
It's been around the 200,000. So staff is to be commended.
So moving along to 2020, I think for a couple of years while we were digesting Rec Track, we have been reporting on the deferred revenue. So as we were reviewing the reports for this month, a question came up internally about my report, stating that since May of 18, we've been showing this. And I said, well, I think it's important that we show, how long we've been doing this. And now I think we've come to a point where our comparables are more comparable. So I wanted to get the board's input on whether or not we wanted to continue with this deferred revenue reporting. If you find it useful, I'm happy to continue it, but I don't, it was because we were having a hard time comparing to the prior year, and I don't think we have that issue any longer. So I'm interested in your input on that. Mr. Deferred Revenue?
I think it's lived its purpose, and I can do without it.
Anyone else? Okay, I'll adjust the reports for next year or for next month. Excuse me. We'll continue to report on revenue, how we're doing compared to the prior year and budget, and so it's always a little hard to gauge from just 1 month, but it looks like we're starting off a little better than the prior year. So I think we're on track. As far as the budget goes, through the month of January. So I'd be happy to answer any other questions on the financial reports.
Yes, I would like to comment on the certificate of achievement. It is, I am just so proud of this staff that we do that. When we, for a number of reasons, when I was part of the committee that we interviewed our accounting services, and I asked the question, said, "Hey, I mean, is this something that's kind of routine?" And everybody, no, no, no. Now there are a number that do, but there's a whole bunch more that don't. And again, it's just particularly if you know me and how angry I get that we live with government bodies like our illustrious state that can't even produce one. They can't even produce a financial statement on time and have it audited, and yet we've done this and we've done it well, and we're recognized for it. It's something that I'm proud of, and it's something that I tell people about when I hear them complaining about the park district. I can say things like, you know something, we get this award and we do this, and our bond rating is AA plus, and all these things, and it's something I'm really proud of. And congratulations to you and your staff.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, if I could just add, though, sometimes I joke around, well, no one ever reads the CAFR, but the one highlight that I've put in the bullet point is that what it means is that we must publish an easily readable and efficiently organized annual report. And I do feel that's, well, yes, but, that's important that we are producing information for the public that maybe everyone can't understand, but it's designed to be, to get the financial information to people. So, thank you.
All right. Moving along, it's the monthly report by funds.
I think we've covered that,
yeah.
unless anyone has any other questions on those.
So on to the approval of expenditures, I move to approve for payment vouchers in the total amount of $562,091.99.
Second.
Superintendent DeAngelis, any other comments on that?
No.
Any commissioner
Somebody with,
comments? Matt, was your hand up? Or Commissioner Coyne?
no, we were just wondering who seconded.
I did, I'm sorry.
Commissioner O'Donnell.
Any commissioner comments or questions? Seeing none, please call the roll.
Commissioner Leduc,
Yes.
Commissioner Leach, Commissioner O'Donnell,
Yes.
Commissioner Tunnel,
Yes.
Commissioner Coyne,
Aye.
Commissioner Grau,
Yes.
Commissioner Harrington.
Yes.
All right. Well, with that passing, I now move to adopt resolution number 20-2, a resolution authorizing the participation in the Northern Illinois Municipal Electric Collaborative, NIMAC, and the authorizing the executive director to approve a contract with the lowest cost electricity provider for a period of up to 36 months.
Second.
Superintendent DeAngelis?
Um,
Bullet points?
So I prepared a memo on page 36 to explain this, and I'll walk you through it. We've actually participated with NYMEX since its inception in 2008. 3 years ago, when we last entered into our electricity contracts, we went through a thorough evaluation of different methods to procure our electricity. And I guess I should start off by saying my first point is that we feel that purchasing electricity at a contracted rate has the benefit of budget certainty. So we did, I think, when we last looked at this, have some discussion on just doing month to month. And the discussion at the time was, market pricing, it could be favorable in low rate environments, but it has the disadvantage of budget uncertainty. And I think we're currently in a low rate environment for energy, but how we spend so much time planning for our budgets and, trying to have some expectation of where we'll be. I think it's an important thing that we do contract for this large cost. So we did look at that time at some other procurement methods, mainly soliciting prices directly from suppliers or engaging a broker or consultant to manage a program and conduct bids on our behalf. So in both cases, there's a fair amount of staff time involved. So the conclusion, as we looked at all of these pros and cons, and we also 3 years ago looked at other districts, how are they procuring their electricity, and it was a mix. The recommendation was that we should continue with NIMEC, and we really haven't, after reviewing all of that information again, I don't feel that anything's really changed. So my recommendation is to participate again in their bid, which is scheduled for March 3rd.
Thank you.
Yeah, so does anybody have questions?
Commissioner Grau?
There was some dissenting votes, if I remember the last time we did this. Is there any way of showing what we would have paid without the, that's what I was looking for in here, that you could have said, ha. We say blah, blah, blah.
It's a lot of tracking. And again, I think at the end of the day, if we would have been better by letting it float, I don't think that that means that that's what we should do. Right? I mean, you can go back in hindsight and say, oh, the energy market dropped, but we don't know what's going to happen. It's for budget certainty, and we're not in this market. So again, the staff time involved in trying to make sure that we're doing the right thing. If we're bidding or looking at our monthly, not locking into a contract, I just don't feel that the benefits outweigh the risks, really.
Any other commissioners? Commissioner Harrington?
I haven't been through this process before, so wasn't privy to some of that discussion. So interesting to share some historical feedback. How many other park districts participate in this collaborative?
Let's see if I have
You have that. I mean, it sounds like for units of government, that stability is really
did.
important.
Yes, so 123 municipalities, 47 park districts. That was the data last time. I did ask them to confirm that all of the information I've included here is accurate, which it is. So that could have changed somewhat, but that gives you a general idea. So that,
The retention as well, which is super high.
right.
Those who have stayed.
Right. So that collective volume, I think, really helps us get a competitive rate, which is what, part of what makes me comfortable, because the energy companies are bidding on the collective volume of all of those municipalities. Now, our rate is based on our historical usage. So they do divvy it up.
To a minimum or something, yeah.
We don't have to commit to a minimum, but they are, each participant gets their own bid rate based on their historical usage, but all of the rates together are based on the volume of all of those municipalities.
That was very helpful. That would have been helpful in here. I don't think that was in there.
Sorry, that was in the old memo. I should have copied.
it?
I was trying to figure out. It was a long one, and I was trying to figure out what's relevant today. So that is important.
Commissioner Grau?
Is there a green energy option?
There is. They will be giving us pricing on. I think I have a point in here. What did I call it? The last one here. The last one. Supposed to be in here. They will be giving us pricing on green energy. So we will evaluate that at the time. I don't know if we want to think about some parameters as to, you know, if it's more expensive, then, you know, how much more expensive would we be willing to pay to utilize that green energy? It's something you know, we can, I'd be happy to get some input on.
Did they give you any sort of timeline as to when that information would be available?
So the bids will be coming to us on March 3rd, and we'll have to make the decision that day. That's where we're asking the board to delegate the authority. So my expectation is that the rates will likely be lower than they were 3 years ago, because of the little bit I know about the energy market. I'm not sure how much. So, I mean, I think if it's important to the board and the district that we use green energy, you know, I'd like to think about those, you know, those rates look, if they're only a few pennies more per therm, that it would make sense to do that. So it'd be interesting to get your input on whether we think.
Well,
it
it's
makes
hard to
sense.
give you direction because we don't know, but
Right.
if it is close, of course, I would be a yes. So,
Do we have any consensus on whether or not that would be something we'd want to look at? I mean, I know that I also am of the opinion that if it's very close, we should opt for the green option, but I'd like to hear if any of my commissioners have a different opinion.
I always support the use of green energy where it makes sense, but I think the definition is what is close, and
Right.
it's hard for the board not being able to evaluate that as a group
Mm-hmm.
to determine from a budgetary standpoint the investment there. And you have to kind of do it that day, right?
Right, right. And so, I mean, what I could say is that you know, I think we've budgeted for this upcoming year pretty much based on our existing rates. So, to the extent we're with, right, that we're still in budget, without wanting to lock us into something that seems unreasonable, I think we can, you know, make a judgment on that. And I would get Terry and Gail's input, you know, as well, if that's okay with you.
because it's 3 years again.
It's up to 3 years. So again, we would look at that, whether, you know, and I don't know if we might think about doing 2 years because of some of the other projects that we're thinking of. But if it's a really good rate, again, I would say, well, yeah, we should lock in for 3 years because, again, we're not locking into how much we use. And if we do reduce our usage because of a solar opportunity, then we're still just paying less, right?
You know, I think it might make sense if the timing works. We can also involve Commissioner Leduc, you know, in that conversation because
Would that be okay?
Yes.
Yeah, that would be great.
she's the liaison. So, are you around March 3rd? Sounds like it's got to be March 3rd, right, Sandra? We'll get the pricing and then we'll have to make that decision that same day.
Yes.
Correct. So,
Does that work with your schedule, Commissioner?
Yeah, I can definitely, I definitely have windows where I have no small people with me and come by.
I usually get the information pretty early in the morning, so I will get you all together, and if that's okay, if
Fantastic.
the board approves.
I have to chime in. I might be on the minority in this one, but I am not, I don't know what close means, and we're not going to have a chance to understand that. And so I am not in favor of paying more at this point. I don't think it's the right thing to do. I don't think it's the right thing to do for the taxpayers of the district. So that's my feeling on that.
Are you in favor of paying up to the budgeted amount of the past
No.
2 years or not at all?
No,
Not the best
no,
deal.
no. You know, I would also add, though, to some sympathy for what she's trying to do. So when I was at Campcraft, one of my responsibilities was to purchase our electricity. Being a large machine shop, it was our third largest cost category after labor and material. And buying energy is worse than trying to buy a used car. It's unbelievable. It's complicated. And you get all these different pitches and trying to understand whether the numbers are apples to apples or whatever. And they show you all this stuff, and there's trends in the market. And do I go for 2 years, or do I go for 3 years, or do I? And I think I'm comfortable. You make the best decision you can, but it should be the most economical. And there's too many other factors involved. I personally would not mess around with, if it costs more for the green, I would not do it. That's my opinion.
I would just like to say that I'm 100% in agreement for the exact same reasons as Commissioner O'Donnell. We have a responsibility to the taxpayer. I don't want that, my comments to be perceived as that I'm opposed to green energy or sustainability. I just think if we don't have the chance to review and find out what that actually means and whether we want to spend the taxpayer dollars to do it, that we should err on the side of taxpayer responsibility and pay the lowest bid that we can get. But I am in favor of the motion. I will be voting in favor of this motion that we
Me too.
do that.
Being a novice to the process, are we able to do a look back on bids and rates? So can we see yesterday's green and non-green? And so we kind of know what ballpark it, in a day, I don't think the market would swing that.
It's hard to say, but whether or not it would swing, but
Just to even
we
get an
can,
idea for how, I don't even know how much more green energy the investment is.
I can ask for that,
Yeah.
for sure.
I think it sounds like there's an appetite to learn more. I know we're under a tight time frame here, but it sounds like there's also just a desire by the board to understand what close means and to be able to comment on that. So if we could do a look back and say, hey, it's 3 cents, and this would be, what would 3 cents be over 3 years? I think we have to look at that number too, and if that's a board-worthy investment where there's consensus, then I think you can get advance notice on that.
Okay, so when I spoke to our rep, I think it was back in December, saying, that I think that we might be interested in seeing that. Is that something that we can, that you can get? The answer was yes, we can incorporate that in the bids, and the indication at that time was that it may be more expensive. Again, as they speak, by a little bit. So I can ask.
Discussions.
Yeah, I can ask them for some more data and try to get that to you early next week.
The problem is we're not going to meet.
Because we're not
Yeah,
meeting.
we're not
Well,
meeting. That's what
you've
we're
got a
talking
grant-
about.
You've got a grant authority or not tonight.
Right. So so it's a 3-year agreement, and then can we?
Up to 3 years, so we'll
could
have,
we not, we could get this data, and then you could go ahead and approve this for this year, and we could make a decision about making a change next year? Is that how this agreement works?
so we could select a 1 year.
Yeah.
And
Then we're gonna get a worse rate. Yeah. Yeah, you're gonna get a worse rate. Yeah. Right.
You're gonna have to give authority tonight, whatever it is. The budget parameters thing was a pretty good idea if you were gonna try and get flexibility.
You could still be talking about a significant amount of money.
Mhm.
The problem we have, I think, is that the board should, in a normal process, the board would have a chance to review bids on these things and make a decision. And one of the criteria of those bids might be that we would be looking at a green alternative. But that is not the case here, and we have to, or we don't have to, but because we won't be meeting before then to review things and approve them, so we're going to grant authority to the park district to make that decision that is really kind of our decision. And I feel that pretty strongly now, the more they think about it, that we should be going for the lowest possible. More the reason that we have to take the lowest number that's there. So because to do otherwise is frankly giving more authority to the park staff than I want to grant.
So you set the budget, so that's the board's role, right? So you set the budget
Right.
for that parameter.
Mhm.
And because of the way this bid is, it's a one-day, right? It's a
Yes.
one-day bid, so you'd all have to come in and make that decision, right?
Right. No, I'm perfectly willing to give that.
Because
that-
it's
I'm
because of this
perfectly.
type
I'm
of-
pro-
It could be $1 million a term. We don't know what it is.
Right.
You don't know what it is.
It's
So
this
you are
type of a
giving
bid.
her,
You normally approve bids over 25,000.
she's either saying yes or no, is what she's saying. And I would just say we have a responsibility to the health of our community. And you know, there are financial reasons to do this. There's also reasons for the health of our community, the people, the planet, etc. So it's not just money.
So I think that what my recommendation would be is to make a decision, give us a consensus. Do you want us to go for that green, option or not, right?
If it's the
difficult.
if
to
it's
say.
the lowest
Right.
cost, it's not a question,
Sure.
right?
Then
I
if
mean,
the lowest cost, you're all okay with it, right?
Right.
We don't think it's gonna be.
Right.
And I mean, I think that no matter what happens, everybody obviously wants to keep it under budget. Like there's no, nobody wants to go
Right.
over the budget. It's a matter of what's the cost difference going to be and what's the cost difference going to be over 3 years. And yeah, balancing environmental responsibility with fiscal responsibility.
Except that's not what the motion says. The motion says we're going to authorize the executive director to approve a contract with the lowest cost for a period of up to 36 months, period. It doesn't say anything about any green initiative, and I'm okay with doing a green initiative. I want to be clear on the record that I don't have any problem with that. I don't want to be cast as the person that is harming the environment because of our bid. We didn't even know until this meeting that was even an option, or at least I didn't know that was even an option, and it's not stated in the motion as it stands. So we'd have to revise the motion.
We could do that.
I know we can, but I'm not really, I'm thinking, as I said, we're already sort of ceding our authority as it is, and to do so beyond the idea of the lowest cost, which is pretty much the lowest responsible bidder type of philosophy, to go beyond that and say, well, no, it's not the lowest possible bid, it's the lowest possible bid, but we might do this, or as long as it's underneath our budget, it's not the same thing, and it's more than I want to, as a commissioner, give up that responsibility and right, because ultimately it's coming back to us, and somebody could very easily say, how come you didn't take the lowest bid for this? And we could justify that, but it might not be an acceptable justification to the taxpayer that we've decided to do that and pay more than what we could have paid. If we had all made that decision sitting here and got to see the bid, that might be one thing, but we're not. We're letting Gail and Sandra and the other powers be do that, and I'm not ready to do that, so I'd be a no vote on a different motion. I'll shut up now.
Well, yeah, and then the counterpoint to that is then we also have to consider the values of the eco-minded taxpayer who might be concerned as to why wouldn't we be also looking at the green bid. So, yeah, I mean, it's a tricky line that we're having to walk, and it's really unfortunate that it's a situation where it's such a tiny time frame, and it's just sort of puts it into an awkward situation.
understood.
I think also for me, without even having any inclination in terms of what the market is right now for green versus non-green energy, I feel like I'm talking in a space that I'm not informed. So it's really hard for me to give authority along the lines of Commissioner Coyne. something I absolutely would want to explore and know more about to make a good decision, but I feel like I have no basis for deciding, does green energy sound good? Yes. Is it greater for a few pennies? Sure. But what do you know? So I think it puts us in a really awkward position.
Call a special meeting, that's your option. I mean, if we can get
Could
this
it be
information.
virtual?
No.
I think with better planning and more information for the board, for me personally, I would have been able to make a more informed decision, but in light of not, I err on the side of being responsible with the dollars, not knowing what those dollars could be. Commissioner Tunnel?
It's a tricky slope here. So I guess based on the way it's written, I think I have faith that the right decision would be made, given the power. I don't think that there's anything that I've seen. You know, if we're talking a few pennies, what does that cost equate overall? Like, I guess, like, would you have just a rough estimate what the difference might be?
Not off the top of my head. I'd have to put that analysis together.
$5,000 or?
I'm not sure.
Okay. Because I'm kind of in the same spot, like not knowing how much it is. I mean, I have utmost faith. I mean, you guys just got significant accolades for what you do every day, and I would have to refer to the experts on this one. I think you would make a great decision, so I would support you. As written, that you guys would make the right choice.
I'm confused.
As the motion stands or as?
As it's written.
Okay.
To do the lowest cost.
Just a quick question. Is this how this bidding historically always works, where it's a really tight time turnaround like that?
Yes, so we delegated the authority 3 years ago in the same way with the same form of resolution. But we did not have a green option.
Because you're not going to meet as a collective body, you have to delegate your authority to somebody to bind.
Oh, I understand that part. I was just wondering, like, why there was any information on why it's such a short turnaround.
The way it's
It's a market.
Just the way it is.
The market, it's market
Just how
driven.
it does. Okay.
Right, but so my suggestion would be you could consider taking a shorter contract, a year or two, and come back in a year, because when you talk to the used car salesman about buying this stuff, they can give you numbers based on what it is today, what it was yesterday. So the answer, Commissioner Harrington, to your question is yes, that information is available. They can tell you, and then you can come to the board and say, hey, you know, we're going to do this, and based on historical data, there is a green option, and it would cost the district X. And then, you know, if X were $6,000, we'd probably all say, oh, yeah, that's okay. And if X is $50,000, we would say no. So, but
Fair enough.
I think you're expecting a level of analysis that's not possible, frankly.
well, I think it is
The reason
possible.
you're having to do this and you're not getting a price right today to approve on your kilowatt hours is because the market is in such flux. And that also goes to the differential. Roughly speaking, it's 2 cents a kilowatt hour is the difference in price for green energy for the last year and a half, according to, and that's measured at the residential level, but 2 cents per kilowatt hour in general. But because NIMEC can't tell you today what your electricity cost would be, take out the green energy part. They can't tell you what that number is, let alone be able to predict what your differential will be. The only way you could have control of this is to have the binding day, you sitting in a special meeting. That's really the only way you can have that information at that time to know what the differential is. Because the predictions aren't accurate. They're not good.
But there is historical data, and I
Yes.
agree with what you're saying, Jim. You know, if it's within X percent, and if you know how many kilowatt hours, we can give parameters that say, you know, within X percent, we're comfortable with, you know. And you would have to say green or not green, if it's within that. So I agree with what you said, Commissioner O'Donnell. So
So you want to go into a shorter contract, because that's what I'm hearing you say? You go into a year contract with the, you know, that could.
But are we losing pricing benefits
might.
there?
Right,
you don't
that's-
ever know.
We don't know, we're not not gonna know. That's
No, the benefit, the reason you lock is for a longer period of time is you anticipate that the rates will go up over that period of time. And I've always been one to say, boy, if I knew what interest rates and stock market prices and energy prices were going to do, I would have retired 20 years ago.
I would say, I guess I would just say that I don't think that we lock into a certain period necessarily because we think things are going to go up. We do it for budget certainty, and we look at where is the rate today versus, the last 20 years. And if it's very low compared to where it's been the last 20 years, then that would be indicative of locking that price in for longer. But that doesn't necessarily mean that, it could still drop or go up, but it's not because we think we know what the market's going to do.
And the no votes last time were from people who said you cannot predict if this is going to be good or bad for us. So we do not know, even if we say 36 months, if it's good for us. We don't know if what we did the last 36 months was good for us. So it's a crapshoot.
Yep.
We had another, I can't remember what it was, but it was another that we went round and round.
Might have been the gas.
But I'll tell you, it's also nice to say, boy, I don't have to deal with this again for another 3 years.
Indeed.
Having done it, I'll tell you.
Make,
Discussion we're having, like Sandra said, one of the main purposes of doing something like this is a staff time for something
Yep.
that's just not, that these people are more expert at us than us, right?
Mhm.
And that with everything that we're doing, we think that that's a better option.
I surrender. But next time we look at this, I would like more data.
Is there consensus on,
Try.
historical data?
It
Is
is
there
part
more
of the
consensus on the
why we
36
don't want to
months?
look at it very frequently because it's painful to try to figure out the data.
There is
But
historical data.
there is.
Consensus on the 36 months?
Yeah,
There's a vote, yeah.
I call the question.
Oh, fellow commissioners. All right, good discussion. Okay, I will, it's not my question to call. That's what I was thinking.
Yes, so call the question.
Sometimes it needs to be said.
Commissioner Leach, Commissioner O'Donnell,
Yes.
Commissioner Tunnel,
Yes.
Commissioner Coyne,
Aye.
Commissioner Grau,
Yes.
Commissioner Leduc,
Yes.
Commissioner Harrington.
Yes.
All right, and now I turn it over to Commissioner O'Donnell.
And I turn it over to Superintendent Armour.
Yes, my report begins on page 40. I'd like to give a few highlights.
There are a few.
There's a lot of charts and numbers, but I wanted to point out our preschool enrichment numbers are a little bit higher this time. We've added some new things, and also the playtime pals and the addition of an after-school portion of our preschool. Our girls' basketball program is the highest it's been in 10 years, and that we've reported here, so that was exciting. Yes. Our Wildwood participation, again, is booming if you look at the numbers there.
Look at the 10-year differential. up
I
there.
know. And our fitness center has seen a strong kickoff to the new year, too, so we're very excited.
Really impressive.
A few other things not in the report. Our new supervisor over seniors and active adults started this week, Sarah Grober, so feel free to stop by and say hi. And we also, since this report was prepared, had our camp registration, which saw some very impressive numbers that I wanted to share. Our first week of registration, we were financially up almost $71,000 from last year. So people came in strong. Sometimes they're waiting to try and figure things out, but we had a very strong start to our camp registration, which was exciting. Very busy week. A lot of online too, which is nice. So I'd be happy to answer any specific questions about the report.
Commissioner Leduc.
I was just really excited when I saw that the tot spot daycare room was now going to have a monthly unlimited punch card. That was, something I had tossed as an idea over to Diane a while ago, and I think it would be really beneficial to parents of and grandparents of young children when they want to catch a workout. And I also thought it would be hopefully be beneficial to us that it'd be a source of guaranteed revenue versus just speculative. So I was very excited to see that's a thing now.
Yes, that was part of our one of our budget initiatives that we were trying out after looking at what some of the other districts were doing, and also that we'd seen a decline to try something new. We've seen growth already. As far as the financials are hard because there's still some people who are in a little bit of a crossover right now, and we're honoring the punch passes still. So
I still have some spots left on
Yeah.
my old punch card.
yes, so we're glad to see the participation has increased.
And I also wanted to commend you and the rest of the staff on the preparation of all the different camps and all the different schedules. I was very impressed as I was flipping through, figuring out where to place my children, and I love all the different options that are available now.
Yes, and they had an open house for the first time this year too. We had about 40 parents attend. So that was, I think, a good first year one right before the registration, just for people who had questions and wanted to ask specifics in person. So it was just an hour, I think, in the evening. So
Great work.
Other comments? Commissioner Harrington.
Over the past couple of years, we spent a lot of time on Centennial Fitness Center. As you all have been flexible due to market changes and fluctuations, and I know we've made some changes to pricing and other. I just want to commend you and Amy and the team for your aggressive approach over the past year plus, and it really looks like it's starting to pay off in terms of new members and non-resident increase in numbers. So I wanted to commend you for that because there were some different discussions a couple of years ago about the state of membership.
yes, and the staff has, and I have to commend the marketing department too. We've had regular meetings, brainstorming. Staff has been out and about more than ever. There's just been a lot of things that I think have contributed to that overall. So it's definitely been a team effort, and everyone
And a
having full
long-term
focus.
effort. Yeah, so free classes and,
Yes.
new programming, and it's great. It's really exciting.
I'd like to add to that too, just like going in, I know you guys spend a lot of time like with customer service experience, and there's just a lot of good energy when you walk into the facility now. Like the people that greet you right at the first, the staff there have been really friendly, and it gives a good vibe when you come in. So
Great.
thanks for all the work that you guys do. I know you guys do the secret shoppers and so forth, and just picking up my son at open gym, it feels good to walk in there. So
Good, thank you. I'll
I
be
think
sure to pass
positive
all
stuff.
of that along to the team there.
Other comments? I guess the only thing I would add, I met with Superintendent Armour and I related this to her. I actually finally dragged myself into FFC in the last couple of weeks. I know. And I haven't been able to do it. I just don't want to go in there. And my observation is it's a totally different place with a totally different audience. And I'm sure you're aware of that. And so I'm not the marketing guru, and I would encourage you to market to our audience because my vibe would be we have much more of a family atmosphere, kid atmosphere, and quite frankly, there weren't a lot of seniors in FFC either. So those are my observations. I didn't like it at all. I wouldn't belong to there. I bet. So.
That is exactly who we market. I mean, that's pretty much our core market that we work on. Families, we stress community, that it's not just a fitness center, but it's family.
Totally
youth
different
that
vibe.
It does amaze me that when I'm there, the amount of staff that know people by names, know spouses, kids' names, injuries. I hear them talking and they just, a lot of members have been there for a long time, and some of the staff have too, and they really get to know people, and I think that is really important in our facility specifically.
Anything else? Okay, I yield the floor.
Nope. No, you don't.
No, you
I don't yield the floor?
No.
Why? Because he has 2 motions.
No, I don't.
Oh,
Commissioner Leach does.
sorry. Oh, that guy's
Right.
not here.
Given that Commissioner Leach is not here, I will step in for the Buildings and Grounds section. Superintendent Wolf, I know you've provided a written report to us. Anything you'd like to highlight?
Yes, I do have a few things I'd like to highlight. My report does start on page 48 of the board packet. I do want to make the board aware that Park Ridge Baseball Softball has donated a 20-foot tall netting style backstop that we'll be putting in at Centennial 12B this year. We're working with them as well as architect to get all the plans and designs together. And they've committed to the funding for the installation of that. We anticipate there'll be some pathways added for accessibility with the program, and that's why we're engaging the landscape architect as part of that. So it's been a good process. We've been working closely with baseball on a new kind of design and layout for a backstop that provides good player bench areas, that contemplates some changes in how we approach it so that it'll have a less maintenance under the player areas, and it'll just survive, I think, better long term and provide better safety, probably some cover and shelter over the bench areas as well. So it's been kind of a fun process to work towards that, and we're looking forward to that as we go forward. So also, at the last meeting, there was some discussion about Prospect Park and usage and looking at the potential to expand usage and open it up for other opportunities, most specifically, I think, in the spring and summer. And we met as a staff to review the fields in general, and just we had a talk with April's team, and I brought in a few of our maintenance staff to talk about, just general field conditions. And one of the things that we had, discussed was the fact that, we've put a lot of work and energy into the field out here, and we had some challenges when we first were growing in the turf out here at Prospect Park. And one of the things that, Christy had constantly reminded me of was that the soils there were not great soils, and that was one of her biggest challenges. And I think, she and the team worked really hard to overcome those, but we don't feel that that it's quite there yet. And our biggest concern that we have is that in the condition that if we expand the usage of that field, we would be nervous about the ability of that turf to bounce back and still continue to be lush and usable for the fall season. And so with the discussion and the recommendation of the maintenance staff for that area, we're actually proposing to do a little more additional work on that field this spring and fall, and it would be done by staff, where we're proposing that we would go out there and do a heavy aeration and then incorporate some biosolids onto the top of that. The EQ biosolids, we've been successful with that in other areas to improve that soil health and soil structure. Watered in, we've got irrigation out here, get some seed down, and not have heavy organized sports on that field, so that we get this grass a good opportunity and give it the good root depth that it needs. We feel like it'd sustain itself better. We have every anticipation that that field would be in much better shape, and we would open it up again for spring next year and for programming, be it lacrosse, soccer, whatever. Part of the overall discussion led us to the idea that, well, what other fields do we have that we have some challenges, because we know that we have poor draining soils and all sorts of other issues. And so, we talked with the staff that take care of the fields, and they've identified a few others that they thought, they could use a rest. And we hear from some of our affiliates, soccer typically, like, hey, can we rest this field? And we had a little discussion about, is that an affiliate decision, a staff decision? How does that work? And so we've kind of thought, we would like to stay focused and try to give Prospect Park this one last opportunity to be as successful as it possibly can. But let's start to take a look at some of these other areas that we know are problematic and come up with a plan and a goal and a schedule going forward so that we can make additional improvements and changes there, have a planned rest period, do these changes so that it's something that we can work out and have a more sustainable future for these fields. So I think the discussion was great. Probably was not the recommendation the board was looking for, but it caused us to really focus in and talk in depth about not only Prospect Park, but our overall athletic field program. And so I thought it would be a good idea to kind of have that out and bring it to the board's attention. Obviously, later we have a discussion about the lawn care applications policy. So this is assuming that you're taking the recommendations and we're still going to allow biosolids. If that were not the case, then I'd have to find a different approach to that project. But I did definitely want to bring that up and kind of close that conversation or bring that conversation back to the board this evening. I think the only other one is maybe just the Centennial Fitness Center HVAC. It's become a project that has shown up that is unplanned and unbudgeted, and those are our least favorite types of projects. But we had learned that we were having some issues with the heating and air in the lobby. We'd had something similar in the past that we thought was rectified. And so when staff had done a little discovery, what we had found was that the wet weather that we had in the fall had contributed to where the temperatures weren't requiring us to turn on the HVAC system to help keep it dried out. We were also getting a lot more water than we had been, and so there was kind of this effect where all of a sudden we had some water in the ground ductwork, and after having gone through that, we put a camera in and found that some of the ductwork had collapsed. So with it being in the ground, that causes us a lot of limitations on what we can do. So we did, at the time, we had the water tested to make sure that it didn't have anything harmful that was, causing any issues, and it did not. So we did that. We've since worked with an engineer to come up with a solution to provide heat and air conditioning for the lobby, and we do have the benefit of that. It has kind of a large open volume space in there. And the proposed solution now is, instead of going through the very disruptive and costly process of digging the floor up and replacing that ductwork in the floors, that we're going to run something overhead similar to what we have in like the Main Park gym, or we have in some of the other spaces at Main Park. We've opened up the ceiling where you've got that round, duct that you use for HVAC. So we're going to be, we're looking to run that from the gym, tapping it through the wall next to where the windows are by the track, and then it'll be going overhead in the lobby space. So it's the most cost-effective way to do it. We do have some money budgeted for the pipe insulation project over at the Main Park, and we're bidding those two projects together as one bid. In fact, the bid just went out today, or is going out today. And the idea is that we're favoring the HVAC project at the fitness center and identifying the pipe insulation project as an alternate. If the bids are appropriate and we can afford all of it, great. I don't anticipate that to be the situation, and we'll probably have to favor the HVAC bid to get that in order, and then we can take a look at the needs for the insulation piping again at another time, because I see that as a less concerning issue, just as an overall operational thing. So we're working with it. I will absolutely have a plan when we come forward to the board for approval at the time that we bring it to the board with how that project will be funded. So
There goes our extra 600,000 in the capital.
we saved a lot of money and expenses last year. So, and obviously we hate when these things happen, but they do, and we're just do our best to manage them. So I'd be happy to answer any questions about any of these things or anything else in my board report, of course.
Anyone have any questions for Superintendent Wolf?
Everything's good except Christy.
Yes, we did have to say goodbye to Christy Tuesday, and we're all going to miss her. But change always brings new good things. So as much as we're going to miss her, and as great as she was, just another new chapter for us, and we're excited about any opportunities that we get to grow. So.
Commissioner O'Donnell, did you have a comment? No. All right, I'll move ahead to our motions. I move to approve Utility Dynamics Corporation as the lowest responsible bidder for the Hodges Park lighting improvements and to accept the total base bid amount of $167,199.75 and to authorize the president to execute and deliver the agreement. Yes.
Second.
Any questions on the Hodges Park lighting improvement partnership with the city?
I will just point out the memos on page 50. I did identify an operating fund that's under the Park Services area. It's a grounds account that we would use to offset if we did have overages, because if we needed to use all the allowances, it could potentially put us in a situation where we're over our budget. So I identified we have room in that budget. We were actually under budget by that much and then some this year, so I feel comfortable with suggesting that as a possibility. I would point out that we do have $20,000 in allowance, similar to the South Park project that we did last year. We approved a bid that was in excess with the allowance. When the project was completed, we received back the allowance as a change order credit, and the project ultimately came in under budget. So I hope for that same situation here. I feel really good about the detailed level that Burke Engineering did on this project, and what we're hearing about Utility Dynamics. In fact, Burke's done many projects with them and said that they are very successful in a project like this, and that they are exactly the people to come in and get a project like this done and done quickly in a high-level park like that. So I expect good results here.
What's the timing of the install? Was that in here or not?
We know that we have events happening on June 16th, I believe is the day. We have every expectation that this will be done on or around Memorial Day weekend.
And are we doing any kind of press release or letting people know that they're coming down?
Oh, I don't know. We could.
I think we should.
Sure.
Because need to manage that.
Right. Yeah, we'll work with Margaret on that. So, and we are retaining those poles. I don't quite know what we're doing with them yet. We're gonna put some by the whales out there, maybe, but I don't. But we are retaining those poles. So I did recognize that they were valuable to the community from that historic standpoint. So, so we will have those poles to do something with. But
take care of them.
we are to be crated and delivered to the owner. So that's the bid spec, is they are to be removed, maintained, crated, and delivered to us. So us, yeah, it's on our property.
All right, may you call the roll, please?
Commissioner O'Donnell?
Yes.
Commissioner Tuttle?
Yes.
Commissioner Coyne?
Aye.
Commissioner Grau?
Yes.
Commissioner Leduc?
Yes.
Commissioner Leach? Commissioner Harrington?
Yes. I move to approve Lakeshore Recycling Systems as the lowest responsible bidder for the 2020 waste and recycling services and to accept the total base bid amount of $31,984.90 and to authorize the president to execute and deliver the agreement.
Second.
Would you like to
Sure.
share some information?
Yep. So board memos on page 52. This is a operational budget bid, and we do this to make sure that we have good pricing and a good relationship with our waste services vendor. As I've identified, when I take all the aggregate, line items that we budget this into, we came in just a little over our budget for this year. We did anticipate that we would have a little bit of an uptick, so we had increased it a little because we knew we were going to have to go out to bid this year. We just felt a little bit short of that, but within those budgets, there are other things budgeted for that are not so precise and exact. So, obviously in the size of our budgets, $230 is not a huge overage, but I just did want to identify that it was a little over our budget, so.
Any questions for Superintendent Wolf on this bid?
One comment, don't tell us about your slush funds.
Oh, it's not a slush fund. I'll be happy to talk about that. We have money budgeted in our waste services accounts for things like catch basins that fill with debris, it might happen once, twice, 3 times, or none. So you have to budget appropriately. So
Okay. But, so we had a discussion when you told us this was coming up to bid. Are they still providing recycling services or not? Or are they taking all the recycling and throwing it in the garbage?
they are providing recycling services. They did not provide us any guarantee of what those services are, just that they are picking up our recycling.
What does that mean?
That means they're providing recycling. I'm not so sure that when Christy put this together that we asked specifically for validation of what their process was, but I know that we're paying for them to pick up our recyclables.
Well, I wouldn't vote against this, but it would be nice to know what's happening to our recyclable.
Sure, I would be happy to follow up on that.
Any other questions? Seeing none, may you call the vote, please?
Commissioner Tuttle?
Yes.
Commissioner Coin?
Aye.
Commissioner Grau?
Yes.
Commissioner Leduc?
Yes.
Commissioner Leach? Commissioner O'Donnell?
Yes.
Commissioner Harrington?
Yes. And now Commissioner Grau.
Great.
The anticipated lawn care application program discussion.
Program, not policy, program.
Program.
I'll probably say a few things and maybe Terry can say a few things.
Sure.
This was a document, well, maybe you can help me at this part. This was a document that was done a bunch of years ago, right when you started.
I believe it was right before I started, actually. It was early 2010 is my recollection.
Okay. So Terry, so I met with Commissioner Leach and asked him what he was interested in this policy. Then I went and met with Christy and Terry, and we marked some things up, and then we went back and forth. And then I got it last week. I sent it to Commissioner Leach, and he said he was fine with it. So the biggest changes are that what we said was at the end of the year in our yearly reports that we'll be getting next week, that a list of chemicals or not chemicals, a list of products that are used would be included in that so the board could see that. And if there was any questions, it's more in an advisory capacity than, I think at one point the board was voting on them or something. So if anyone has a question, it's transparent, but it's not something that'll come up as an agenda item. Also, Christy agreed that she would let the affiliates know as within a day of any type of applications being made. Of course, the mandatory state laws that tell you, what you have to post. And then in addition to that, for the biosolids, there is no requirement to post anything. But Terry and his staff agreed that they would put big horses up with signs that say what's happening, and you can find more information. And then also on our website, there'll be a place where you can find where all the products are and when the applications are, right? I think.
Yeah, I think when the applications are as well, I believe too.
Right. So Commissioner Leach seemed happy with that, and so I don't know if there's other input. It was geared toward his concerns, but there might be other concerns.
Well, I think there were board concerns because we hosted a public meeting on this, and I think there was general board consensus that this program deserved a look, and there were things that were brought to light through the special meeting process about signage placement and feedback from our affiliates that was very well received, it looks like, in this program. So I commend you and Commissioner Leach and Superintendent Wolf for taking into consideration all those points that were brought up during those meetings that we had on this to come up with a more relevant program based upon the evolution of the past several years of where we've moved.
Sure.
Our lawn care.
Yeah,
program, too.
we did not run it by the affiliates. I don't know, if we should send it.
I mean, I think from my perspective, we could, really what we're doing is just identifying and communicating out what our practices are, and it's just kind of reassuring that here are a couple of points and times that we're going to continue to have a communication. So, I think for me, the one thing that I want to bring up, and in some of my discussions working through this, it was my recollection that we were going to do this, or that the idea was that this was a program, not specifically a policy. And I know that we've had that discussion. We've since reviewed the minutes of the day, and it seems a little more clear to me now that it was requested to be a policy, which I'm completely open with if that's the board's desire. But again, that really falls back to the board's decision. I just wanted to be open with that, and that's I'm comfortable either way. So, and again, if we want to talk to the affiliates or not now, or just communicate with them, like here is the plan or the program or the policy, however it works out. So,
I appreciate the time that has been spent on this. However, I think it would behoove us to reach out to our affiliate partners because they had some concerns about timing. For instance, when we talk about the applications of biosolids, they schedule out practices long in advance. I don't know if in 24 hours they need to make some decisions about when folks are on the fields or not.
Those are done between seasons, and it's one time a year.
Right, but that's not put in here. There's no schedule put in here. So I'm stepping into the shoes of some of the concerns we heard from the affiliates that if it's not in our program, they don't know.
They don't know.
that. Yeah.
It's not transparent.
Right.
We can say that they're done in the fall between seasons, except one time.
Well, I think that's the one time caused a lot of concern.
Yeah.
So I think from my perspective, I'm impressed with the new program, and I think it's definitely where we all had talked about wanting to be, and it really listens to a lot of the concerns. But I would recommend we run it by our affiliates because after going through our affiliate agreement process with them, as lengthy and as much as we solicited input for a year and a half on, I think that they are valued partners, and this is an issue that's of utmost importance to them. And I think they'll be very pleased with seeing a lot of this and understanding the rationale. But if we're missing something, I want to make sure we address
Sure.
it sooner, rather than
Okay,
passing it.
so let me clarify though, you do want us to tighten up the biosolid section with more information about when it's applied and.
That would be my personal
Yes.
interest.
And
Yes.
if there's an exception, we could put some, do you see any need for putting language, if there's an exception, that you would let them know within a certain time period, right? I don't know.
So and I was just stopping to think this through a little bit because one of the things that the conversation when we started was, it's all about communication, and a lot of it was about the timing of it, and why can't we just let people know, give them 2-3 days, and we'll go. It's not as much of an issue with the biosolids, but when it comes to other applications, it's very weather dependent. We can't put down some of the products that we do, the wind speeds, the temperatures, like we can, it's very common that we have staff scheduled to come in at say 5 a.m. to do an application of something. Well, then the wind is just not right, and we have to hold off, and they have to go find something else to do, and we come back the next day. And so those become big challenges for us, things that we've had to try to work through with the school district that is actually the main driving force behind why that was switched to biosolids, because it didn't have those restrictions. So I think from the biosolids, I think the 24 hours, we probably could look at a little bit more, because the most often we're going to have where we're scheduled this out to happen with MWD applying them, so we'll know in advance,
Schedule the delivery.
I believe.
Yeah.
And
More than 24 hours.
yeah. So I have to do a little research, because some of these things I'm saying to you with slight confidence and saying I believe, because this would have been things that Christy would have done and dealt with, and now I don't have her as a reference, so I've got to do a little more research on that. But I'm happy to do that.
I also know that one of the issues that was raised was there were, far be it, organic fertilizers or organic sprays used, or fertilizers, whatever they're called, at Hinckley, for instance.
Mhm.
Left an odor, the grass was wet, and we have a bunch of football players going to play. Do you know in advance of 24 hours, are you planning to give affiliates notice of that?
Yes.
So I think those are the things that I think that would be most pertinent to them, and those are the concerns that I heard them bring up, in that if they've got all these kids showing up at these fields, they want some advance notice. So I don't know if it says in here that also
we-
fertilizers?
Yeah, it was
pesticides?
I think we tried to
It
make
just
it
says-
any application, I thought.
It just says biosolids.
No, there was,
Signs.
Lawn care products.
it should
Last
be,
bullet point just says pasta.
it should be in
Right.
there.
Oh,
Signage, and then biosolids has 24
No, we had,
hours.
huh,
so that,
it was gonna be for everything.
Yeah, we did.
We did,
I thought I had that in there too.
something changed.
Well,
All right, thank you for catching
Sure,
that.
sure.
That
No,
was the intent.
Yeah.
I didn't reread the final
Yeah,
one.
and I
but-
knew that was a concern of theirs.
Because those are generally more, more important
Yeah.
right.
than the biosolid.
Right. I think it's just communication and notification, and we heard that loud and clear.
So the biosolids, just so I'm clear on it again, we're putting as far as, I don't know about the schools, but on the play fields, they put on in the spring, correct?
it's spring or summer. It's actually probably a little bit more towards summer because the issue with the earlier part of the year sometimes is that if the product still hasn't dried enough, if it's been too wet from the winter. So we've applied it in the summer and fall before.
Okay.
I'm getting a look. Yes.
I was remembering when the football players were on it.
Yeah, that was fall in that year, but it's sometimes we can do it in the summer too. So it varies.
Okey doke.
I just want to make sure, and I think that's where you were going anyway, but that we have plenty of notice on that particular one because that's the emotional part.
Oh, yeah.
It may or may not be. I'm not even going to question the legitimacy of the concerns because I don't want to. But the concerns are, there is an emotional concern reaction to that particular product, and we all know that.
Sure.
And so the longer notice that we can give them, and if they can have an idea at the beginning, as early as possible as to how this is going to affect their season.
Right.
So that part might be that it's like the week of this, or we're going to do that. I think that's going to help when this is presented to the affiliates. That's my guess from my conversations with particularly football.
Yeah, I mean, we have every intent is to increase the communication on when and how these happen. So I think I can work on a few modifications to this, share it with Commissioner Grau for her advice and opinion before moving it along to the different affiliate groups and working that through with them. My goal and hope will be to be back at the next meeting, but maybe the one after.
Terry, when's the earliest you would apply anything?
Any products whatsoever, April, mid-April. We've got some stock on hand because we stopped our application last year, so we're gonna. But we, yeah, March is fine. I've had this discussion with Matt Freer, who does a lot of our lawn care applications and did under Christie, and we've been talking about this. So
We'll get on it.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm really glad we had this discussion here, so we could
Yeah.
clean those few things up in this time frame. Yep.
But great work, you guys, on
Yes.
kind of listening to the concerns and showing how we can
Thank you.
be more responsive. Yeah. All right. Intergovernmental update from Commissioner Coyne.
None.
Nothing. Okay. Any communications or correspondence? I see the letter from the GFOA. Congrats again. Any new business? All right. I move to adjourn to closed session for the purposes to discuss probable or imminent litigation per 2C11. We will reconvene to the regular board meeting to adjourn the meeting.
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Tunnel?
Yes.
Commissioner Coyne?
Aye.
Commissioner Grau?
Yes.
Commissioner Leduc?
Yes.
Commissioner Leach? Commissioner O'Donnell?
Yes.
Commissioner Harrington?
Yes.